KMSU.
Yeah, is Dustin there?
Yes, this is.
Dustin, hey, this is Alex Winter.
Alex Winter, how you doing?
Good, man. How you doing?
Pretty good. I'm here with my co-host, Ton.
Hey, how you doing, Alex?
Great. Hey, man. How's it going?
It's fantastic.
I'm glad that we could finally hook up here.
Yeah, no sweat.
All right, well, we got some standard questions for you, if that's cool.
Yep, sure.
All right, well, we'll start off here and ask you how you got started in acting.
How did I get started in acting? I started acting professionally when I was around 9. I was that dreaded child actor that you hear horror stories about.
Yeah.
And I started doing commercials. I was living in St. Louis. I think the first professional thing I did was a Kentucky Fried Chicken commercial under the arch with the Colonel in 107 degrees St. Louis heat, which is wreaks havoc on the potato salad. And I went on to do some show at the Muni Opera, and then I moved to New York and was on Broadway for about 5 years. And that's how I got started.
Okay, then you went right from Broadway to acting in movies?
Nope, I did not. I went from Broadway to film school.
Okay.
To write and direct, and I went to NYU film school and studied filmmaking, which is my primary passion. And when I came out of film school, I moved to LA and started shooting commercials and music videos in LA, and that's when I acted in the movies.
Okay, and then you got Lost Boys sometime around there?
Yeah, I did a few movies. I did Death Wish 3 and Lost Boys. Those were some of the early movies I did. I did both of those while I was actually still going to school.
Okay.
I kind of did those on my summer breaks. And then I did Bill and Ted after those, once I was done with NYU.
So what was it like on the set of Lost Boys?
It was fun. You know, it was, we shot a chunk of it up in Santa Cruz, and I had only night stuff to do, you know, because I was playing a vampire, so I had like a blanket taped to my window and literally got up when the sun went down and went to bed when the sun came up, and I did that. It's a very strange thing to do for a month or two at a time, but it was really fun, and the city kind of treated us like rock stars, so we had a really good time. We were driving motorcycles and, you know, mucking around. It was a really fun job. That was actually one of the easier, funner jobs I did, probably because I don't actually have that much to do in that movie, but it was a really amazing crew. A lot of really big people were involved in terms of, you know, shooting it, and it was a good time. Yeah, it was crazy. It was the mid '80s, and everybody was completely out of their minds, but it was a good time. I managed to survive it.
Would you say was it similar experience with the Bill and Ted thing, or?
No, that was radically different for a couple of reasons. One is I'm in every scene of that movie, so it was a considerably more work, which was great. It was a lot of fun. It's kind of clowning. I mean, it's not like I was being hired to, you know, solve some astrophysical quotient. So it wasn't, you know, arduous, but it was a lot more labor and, you know, much more focus on the character and actually doing the acting work on that one. But it was, you know, reason I had a really good time. It was a playful, both those movies were pretty playful set. I think you kind of have to have a playful set in order to kind of, you know, to stay in character and play clowns, which is basically what those guys are. But it was radically different. Lost Boys was, you know, we were riding motorcycles and acting like rock stars, and Bill and Ted's was pretty goofy. So the vibe in general was pretty different.
Was it pretty a natural progression then as well, going into the Bogus journey and everything? Was that just hands down you were in, or?
Well, yeah, it's kind of hard to replace me. I played Bill, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, hands down, we were in. There was a pretty big gap between the two movies because the first one we made, and it got into some legal skirmish with the company that went out of business. So the first one sat on the shelf for a year or two. And then it came out and it did well. And, you know, I went and did a bunch of other stuff. I had a TV series at MTV called The Idiot Box, which I wrote, directed, and starred in, and a bunch of other. I was shooting a lot at that time, a lot of music videos and commercials and stuff like that. So I went off and did had a whole other life, and then they came back to us to do the second one. And I think it was as much as 4 years later. But, you know, it was in terms of a progression, it was a very natural thing to jump back into. Those characters, once you play them, are, kind of second nature. So it wasn't a difficult head to get back into.
Were you surprised at how popular that movie became after the years?
The first one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say I was surprised that it became popular when it came out. You know, I don't think either of us really expected it to be. I mean, I can say, but certainly neither of us expected it to be a phenomenon. You know, I think we thought it might be kind of a sweet, genuinely funny romp that people might enjoy, but neither of us. I don't think anyone involved with it, including the writers that created it, expected it to take off the way that it did, and none of us certainly expected it to have the shelf life that it's had. It's really endured. I can't tell you I know why. I don't think anyone ever knows why anything endures. You know, why something kind of hits the zeitgeist and something else doesn't. I really don't have the slightest idea why that did, other than it's nice. You know, it's cool to be part of something that's endured.
Well, there was a lot of big names in that movie, too. I mean, like, you had George Carlin and obviously Keanu Reeves. I don't know if you keep in touch with him still, or?
Yep, sure do.
What do you think of his success that he's had?
He's a great actor. You know, he works really hard.
There you go, Ton. Wait, let's go back to the Lost Boys quickly. What about that big sweaty saxophone player? Do you keep in touch with him?
You know, something funny about that guy is when I was at NYU, before I did the Lost Boys, I used to see a lot of bands play CBGBs, and one night, like really late, like maybe 3 or 4 in the morning, after whoever was headlining, which wouldn't have been a big band, like maybe the Dead Milkmen or someone like that, some indie band, this band came on called, something in the Ken Dolls, like Tommy and the Ken Dolls. And it was that dude. It was the sweaty saxophone guy.
Yeah.
But his whole band, he wasn't dressed like one, but the rest of his band was all dressed like Ken dolls. So they had identical wigs and identical, like, Ken doll outfits. And then he played piano and saxophone. And the funny thing is he wasn't like you see that the Lost Boys, and then I guess he went on to tour with Tina Turner and stuff. And you assume he was just like this kind of cheesy studio musician guy, right? But he was actually this, like, total, like, indie alt-rock downtown New York guy. And he had this really weird kind of Zappa-esque band. And then I was in Santa Cruz, and he was like, you know, he had you know, found a can of oil and taken off his shirt, and the rest was somewhat history, I guess.
Yeah.
Wow. The legacy remains.
I'm telling you, man.
That guy, in my opinion, was way sweeter than the Coreys. I'm just saying.
Yeah, he's pretty sweet.
Wow.
So we just read recently that Bill and Ted Part 3 is confirmed, or will be confirmed, maybe?
I don't know. You might have read that on like a Duluth-based fanzine.
That's what it was, yeah.
Yeah, I'd buy that. This hasn't been confirmed. I mean, it's become this kind of amusing internet wildfire, and there's almost zero truth to anything, as usual, that's on the internet about show business. There's almost zero truth to anything that anybody's read. I mean, me and Reeves and the writers are all good friends, and we kick ideas around from time to time, just kind of like kicking the tires on the franchise to see if there's something that would be worth pursuing. Lately, we've sort of been looking at it more seriously, but it's really no more real than that. I hate to say.
Man, the Duluth zines usually don't let us down. I don't know what's.
Yeah, they were right about Robert Zimmerman, right? But yeah, I don't know. It's kind of comical to be on the inside of an internet story, because you just realize just how completely inaccurate it all is when they're talking about you. But no, there's not much more to it than that. I mean, it might happen one day, but it's who knows, you know.
I don't know if you can divulge this, but if it were to happen, what do you think the storyline would be like?
I think that any sequel, you know, because it's a comedy, would want to play on the question of where those guys are, you know, now. Like, where two naive guys that never really grew up and were supposed to have changed the world, what really happened? I think that's a pretty good question to start with because the answer has got to be funny.
Yeah.
And unexpected. And I would say that's basically what a starting point would probably be.
Well, they grew huge beards and sang Kiss ballads. I know that much.
Yeah, that was 20 years ago.
Yeah. That kind of writes itself, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.